Yesterday, we looked at adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing functions. So let's look at a particular set of functions. If I had, and again, you don't really need to write this down, okay? This is just kind of information before we get to the lesson. So f of x equals 3x plus 2, and then g of x equals, oh, let's just do, hang on, that's not right. Let's do x minus 5. So I'm going to graph these. 3x plus 2 and x minus 5. Graph. So the composition of those, well, not the composition, sorry, the addition of those, f plus g of x would be 3x plus 2 plus x minus 5. So if I just add these two functions straight up and down, 3x plus x is 4x, and 2 minus 5 is negative 3. So I'm going to draw that graph. 4x minus 3 is the x. Okay. And now let's do the little trick that we did yesterday. Let's make that bigger. Okay. So let's draw f of x in green, in blue, and g of x in green. And now f plus g of x we'll draw in red, and it is the addition of the two. So if I picked any particular point, let's say x equals 2, the height of the blue plus the height of the green should equal the height of the red. But why is the red shorter than the blue? Because the green is negative. So if you're adding functions and they're both above the x-axis, then the addition is going to be above. If they're both below, then the answer is going to be below. If one's above and one's below, where's it going to land? Somewhere in the middle, and it will land on the side of the x-axis that had the bigger number to begin with, right? So I should be able to take this green mark and set it up there, and it equals the end of the red mark. And that's true with all of them. Okay? Well, if I plug in f plus g of 2, how do I find what that number is? Ooh, we could. But this one says plug 2 into f plus g. So I'm going to put 2 in here. Right? So 4 times 2 is 8, minus 3 is 5. In theory, I should be able to do the same thing in the other two functions and get the same answer. Right? So this 5 represents the red mark on the graph. It's 5 units high. Well, what if I take 2, so this 2, and I plug it into both functions? So up on top we have 3 times 2 is 6 plus 2, I get 8. And if I plug 2 into g, 2 minus 5 is negative 3. What do you notice? So this would be the blue mark on the graph, and this would be the green mark on the graph, and the blue plus the green equals the red mark. So that kind of goes to show us that if you do f of 2 plus g of 2, that's exactly the same thing as doing f plus g of 2, which is what Sadie tried to do at the beginning, right? She tried to do this, which is fine. But written in this notation, you're supposed to plug 2 into f plus g. But technically, it doesn't matter. We did this last year with composition. Remember when we'd plug a point into one function and then plug that answer into another function? Well, now instead of plugging answers in, I'm plugging the original number in. So I'm plugging x in twice, either twice into that function and this function, or once into that function. And we're going to reach composition tomorrow. So today you're going to either add, subtract, multiply, or divide, but you're going to do it in the original functions. What I mean is, if I said f of x equals x squared plus x minus 4, and g of x equals something awful, and I wanted f minus g of 8, do I have an f minus g? Do I know what f minus g of x actually equals? No, I could find it out, right? And I could write it out and simplify and then plug 8 in to figure out what the answer is. But I'm lazy, and I assume you are too. So instead, I just plug 8 in here, and then in there, and what do I do to the two values? Subtract g, the answer from g, with the answer from f. And that's it. Okay? What if it said f minus 2g? So whatever I get for g, I double it, and then I do f minus that double. So look on page 141. One of these functions is a trig function, which we talked about last year, and all of the domains are in radians. So everybody pull out your calculator and push mode, and make sure that your calculator is in radians. So that third one down is radians. You push mode, this button right here, and then the third one down is radian or degree. Make sure it's in radians. Radian is the default, but last year we did go back and forth between radians and degrees quite a bit. Okay, I don't need this much. Oh, I made it smaller, which made it bigger. No? I'm really having a hard time. Hey, there we go. All right, so number 1 says d of pi plus 3 times f of 2. So let's figure out what d of pi is. So function d says 2 cosine of x. So 2 cosine of pi is negative 2. And for those of you who have forgotten, 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2. Radius is 1. Cosine is the x value. So cosine equals x and sine equals y. So if I do a pi rotation, how long is that x? If that's a unit circle. We've all forgotten. I was afraid of that. So the radius of this is 1. So this point right here is negative 1 comma 0. So cosine is equivalent to the x value, which is negative 1. So really, we just took 2 and times it by negative 1, and we got negative 2. We'll hit sine and cosine again later, because I'm sure you've all forgotten it. Okay, so this is negative 2 plus 3 times, what is f of 2? Well, 2 divided by 2 minus 4, 2 over negative 2 is negative 1. So what is 2 plus 3 times negative 1? Negative 5. Okay? The really hard way to do this would be to take d of x and add it to 3 times f of x, and then plug the numbers in, which is not what we want to do. Yes, that is negative 5. So if you see something on a test, like the ACT, that asks for what is d plus 3f of, well, actually this one wouldn't work because one of them is pi and one of them is 2. So if you saw this, don't create that function. You don't need it. If you created the function and then plugged into it, it would work. But that's going to take way too much time, and on the ACT time is really short. So plug each of those values into the functions and then just add them together, and it will always be the same thing. Okay? So let's do number 2. Negative 2 times c of 3. So you kind of, let me zoom in on that a little bit. There we go. So if I plug 3 in there, what do I get? 5 raised to the 0, which is 1, and 1 minus 2 is negative 1. And then we're going to add f of 1. So x over x minus 4, that's f. So I plug 1 in. 1 over 1 minus 4 is negative 3. So plus negative 1/3. So all I have to do in my calculator is negative 2 times negative 1 minus 1/3. And they probably want the fraction form. Did I do that right? Okay. It's not the answer I got last period, so I must have messed them up. Maybe we did a different problem. Okay. I do like the story problems. Some of them make you think, so I'm willing to give you 1 extra credit point per story problem that you do. I don't think they're essential, but instead of 11 points, you could get, what are there, 4? So you could get 15 on this if you figure out the story problems, and we'll talk about each of the story problems tomorrow. Deal? Yeah, you probably have enough room for that. Just tear it out and hand it in. I'm okay with that. Yes, and remember, if we do a book burning, I don't want hot dogs, I want bratwurst. I wish we could get away with it. Wouldn't that be cool? I'm pretty sure they're not going to let us light a fire. Where? I'll do some research.